On ABC Western Plains, you're with James Findlay.
Now we're talking.
Your next local ABC news coming up in about 11 minutes. But now, after months of discussions in the community, a decision was made at last night's Dubbo Regional Council meeting on the future of the Dubbo sale yards. There was a proposal to potentially sell or lease the facility, but ultimately a majority of councillors voted to keep the yards kept in council hands, and with changes made, including a hike in stock fees, an additional $1 million annually. Dubbo Regional Council Mayor Matt Dickerson is with you. If you've got any questions for him, get them in 0467 922 684. Good morning to you. Big night.
Yeah, well, look, first of all, James, welcome. First week here in Dubbo on air, so I like to always come along and welcome every resident that moves to Dubbo. So congratulations, you've made a wise choice. So
yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Look, nearly 200, about 240 people turning up to this council meeting last night. Might be one of the most attended council meetings.
There's probably one other time. There was an issue back in 2014 called Save Our South. There was a planning issue. We held that meeting at the theatre. I don't remember the exact numbers in the audience at that one, but that'll be the only other time that we've had that sort of number, and it was at the theatre. So you couldn't fit 240 people around our chamber, so a normal monthly meeting wouldn't have that, but that's fantastic. I would love to see that many people at every monthly meeting. Now we've got online streaming. Sometimes we only get 2 or 3 physically at the chamber when the meeting's on, but 240, democracy in action. Great to see people come along and watch a council meeting. For many people, they would never have watched a council meeting before. Maybe it's not the normal thing you'd see on the stage in a theatre. Maybe it's not as dramatic as a normal theatre production, but I still think it's interesting to watch democracy in action.
Okay, let's get to it, because the sale yards remain in council hands now. What will change?
Well, there's a few things that will change. So I'll go back to where you started there. 3 options that we had, and this is sensible from a council perspective, a sensible review of a business. We've got various businesses that council owns. The idea of those is to take a bit of a burden away from the ratepayer, not to add extra burden to the ratepayer. And we'd gotten to the point with our review. It's a 74-year-old business. With our review of this business, that we found a couple of issues. One was it was losing close to $1 million a year. So that's not great for a business that should be injecting money back into the economy. We needed to address that. The second part of it was there's been some regulatory changes, not surprisingly, over a 74-year period. We weren't convinced that the way it was operating was compliant with all the modern legislation from the state government, from the ACCC, so we needed to review that. In going through that process, we reviewed it. A sale was an option. We went out to an EI. What sort of price could we get? Let's test the market. A lease was an option. What would someone pay on an annual basis for us to retain it? And also keeping it internal but changing it. And the crucial thing that came through all of this discussion, James, was that doing nothing was not an option. Our legal advice, our discussions with the Office of Local Government, doing nothing, we did not have the option just to say, it's all okay, we'll leave it alone, both from a financial perspective, but probably more importantly, a legal perspective. After, well, probably years, it started back in early 2021, this whole process, we got to the stage where last night the decision was made to do what we call the modified status quo. So at the moment, one of the tricky parts has been the intertwined process with the DWSA, Dubbo Stock and Station Agents, the agents themselves, and council. And there's a bit of legislation called PPP, Public-Private Partnership. One of the questions from Office of Local Government was this in fact a PPP? Because if it was, you didn't ever ask permission to go to a PPP. So that answer was left hanging while we worked out this whole process. So now, quite clearly, we'll say council will take over the operation, so the parts where the DWSA were operating, so for example, running the scales or running the computer system for the scales, council will take over full control of all of that. So that means it's clear where the boundaries will be, and we'll take a few months, 6 months to go to this process.
Okay, and because that was a problem because some people weren't able to sell when they wanted to, right?
The issue was, and there was a lot of debate about this, and it was certainly unclear definitively, but if I was an agent that wanted to come along and start selling at the Dubbo Regional Livestock Market, the publicly owned facility, could I in fact use the facility and start selling there? And again, this was a lot of discussion, a lot of debate around this particular item. Did you need to be a member of DWSA to sell, or could you sell, but then the computer system that was operated by DWSA, did you need to bring your own computer system in and plug it into our scales?
Sounds like it was quite a mess.
It was, well, that's probably being bit too harsh, but it was certainly a clumsy environment.
Right.
And what ended up happening as a result of all that was there were 13 active agents in DWSA, and effectively that's all that used the sale yards, which again for a public facility doesn't seem quite right. So that'll change. Council may now take control. And the important part about that as well is that we want to lower the barrier to entry, James. We want to make it easy. If you're an agent, you want to start selling, hey, the more throughput we get, we heard from a lot of people about how important this facility is for Dubbo, $60 million it injects into our economy approximately. So the more throughput, the more agents there, the better. Let's make it easier for agents. So there was a $12,686.93 one-off fee that a new agent would pay to start selling there. And we've said, well, that's a large barrier to entry. So we've reduced that to a $200 annual fee for all agents that want to use that sale yard. So an agent now, going forward, could just pay their $200 a year and start selling there.
These are quite big structural changes that will come to the sale yards by the sounds. Is council properly equipped to take on these changes?
No, but we will be. So we've got 6 months. In our resolution, we said we'll have a 6-month process to transition. Sales will still happen next week, the same as they've always happened with DWSA involved. And DWSA is a very important organisation, and the 13 agents that are there are very important to those sale yards. So they'll still continue on. And again, in the background, we'll go through this process to make these changes. So 6 months, we believe is enough time to get the right staff involved, to get the right computer systems. So if you said, is Dubbo Regional Council ready to run the complete sale yards on Monday? Absolutely not. But that's why we've said sensibly in that resolution to go through that process. The other part is a price increase, and there were some concerns about price increases in the whole process, whether it was leased or whether it was sold. But we did say the one way to guarantee a price increase is for us to retain it. And so we've now gone for a 32.5% price increase for cattle and a 27.4% price increase for sheep. So that'll take it to $16 per head of cows for cattle and $2 per head for sheep. So that gets it more in line with other competitive sale yards like Forbes and Wagga.
It's 7:26 on ABC Western Plains. With you is the Dubbo Regional Council Mayor, Matt Dickerson. You're hearing about the council vote last night and the changes that will happen to the Dubbo sale yards. As you said earlier, huge deficit last year, over $1 million in the financial year. You've just talked about some increases there. No doubt having those kind of deficits ongoing, probably not sustainable for a council. Are you sure that those increases you're going to have are going to be able to make sure that you can continue it in the long term?
Our current modelling on that, by doing those two price increases, that should inject approximately extra $1 million onto the bottom line. Now, that means that we get to break even. When you look at the accounting standards for the state and what they talk about with councils, one of the things we should be doing is delivering the equivalent of the Commonwealth 10-year bond for all of our businesses. That's about 4.3% at the moment. So it's fair to say that you probably will look at some more increases. As it settles down, we should be returning about $1.3 million profit to the residents of Dubbo rather than breaking even. So that's something we'll look at. But the idea here is to make some changes, get some efficiencies in how we operate it, let that settle down, see what that looks like, and there may well be price changes in the future. Who knows? But again, we need to get to that point where we're delivering a profit back to the ratepayers.
Is privatisation off the table now?
The resolution last night says no sale, no lease, go forward. But of course, any council at any stage can still make changes. So you can never say never, but it was pretty clear during this process we've got an outcome. I'd be very surprised if this changed any time in the near future.
Just before you go, is council looking at any other things that you might need to lease or privatise going forward?
So we've already leased our caravan park. That was a few years ago. We used to run that internally. We've leased that out. We've got a contract in place for our swimming pools now, our aquatic leisure centres. They were leased out a long time ago. They were brought back in-house. They're now leased out. We'll constantly review all of our business operations because any business should do that. You need to adapt and change to the changing market. So everything is always being reviewed on an ongoing basis, which is what we should be doing from the state government's perspective, but common sense says that as well.
Local council elections coming up in a couple of months' time, in September?
14 September is the local government election.
Running again?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I'll let you know as soon as I work out what I'm doing.
Well, it was lovely to meet you, Mayor, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, James.
That is the Mayor of the Dubbo Regional Council, Matt Dickerson, on ABC Western Plains. You can keep your texts coming in 0467 922 684.